Hey guys, and welcome to today's episode of the Spiritual Evolution Podcast. I'm your host, Andrea, and I'm here today with Hannah, and she is known as spirituality, like you drink the tea, on TikTok, and I will be linking all of her stuff in the description below. But she is a Christian witch who I'm really happy I got to speak with because I learned a lot, and I also was raised Christian, so I was able to gain some healing from that conversation. So I hope you guys enjoyed it as much as I did. So how did you begin on your religious healing and spiritual journey? Like how did you kind of get into all of this kind of
I really was just kind of curious about the craft, but I didn't want to give up Christianity in my relationship with Jesus specifically. I never felt like I didn't belong with Jesus, but I always kind of felt like I didn't belong with religion. And I had friends who were witches in middle school and high school, and kind of fell out with them as I got into college. But I guess because I was curious about the craft but didn't want to give up my relationship with Jesus, I just kind of Googled one day, are there Christian witches? And it turns out there's lots of them.
Yeah.
And that was really just kind of the starting point of how all of this came about.
Right. Yeah. I've always been interested in it, and it's funny because Jesus will come up a lot. I've been told that Mary is one of my spirit guides, and I've always had a very special connection with her, I feel like. But and I just have a lot of questions. I have a feeling that we're probably going to I have been having too many questions. I've been having 2 hours worth of questions. So once we hit an hour, if you want, we can do a second, a part 2 or something.
Sure.
I have lots of questions about all of this stuff. So let's see. What was it challenging at all, working with the Christian God at first? Did you have any reservations with all of that at all?
No, because I grew up Christian, so I had a relationship with the Christian God my entire life. So
Okay.
It's not like I left that and then had to come back to it. I just kind of brought those beings with me into my practice. They never left.
Okay, cool. So I have a couple questions about, because I work with Lilith, so I want to get that book that you were talking, the Book of Lilith, but
Yes.
Can you expand a little bit on why she was kicked out, or what that represented, or what your take on it is with that situation?
Yeah, so the Book of Lilith is technically viewed as a work of fiction, but it's really more kind of a UPG, which in the world of witchcraft and spirituality, a UPG is an unverified personal gnosis, which is how you experience a spirit or an entity or a deity personally, but not everyone else may experience it that way, or it's not directly based in fact or mythology or whatever.
Yes.
So it's kind of the author's interpretation of the Lilith story, but it definitely has some truth to it. So basically, it's not like God was like, Lilith, you're bad, we're going to kick you out. It's, God made humans, and humans are stupid. And Adam was like, I don't like this wife that doesn't want to submit to me. I want her out. And it was Adam who was responsible for kicking her out of the garden, essentially. And that book kind of tells her story in terms of trying to make things work with Adam and leaving the garden and what happened to her after and why she became demonized in a sense. So I always forget the last name, but the first name of the author is Robert. So the Book of Lilith by Robert something.
Yeah, it will come right up. When I looked it up, it came right up. And it's really interesting to see how a lot of the female aspects were taken out of the Bible at a certain point and stuff. And we'll get into that because you know a little bit about or maybe you know a lot about Asherah, the wife of God. So what are your thoughts on all of that and how it was kind of removed from the Christian religion at one
Well,
point.
it makes complete sense in that already it was a patriarchal society, and the church ruled the government, and they wanted power and they wanted money, and so they reshaped the Bible and sacred religious texts to fit their own narratives. That is precisely what King James did. It makes complete sense that female empowerment was erased from the Bible altogether because the men of the church just wanted all of the power, as they still do today.
Right. Yeah. It's interesting because it's like to see how people, like a lot of people in politics have been just kind of grasping at straws and seeing how like everything with COVID kind of backfired in their faces a little bit. And now I just think we're at that tipping point where things are gonna finally start like getting better in a way that like we've never seen before. I really hope things are gonna start changing,
Yeah, hopefully.
So let me see here. Like, what do you believe like that the hidden books of the Bible like are valid? Like, do you think that they have validity to them? Yeah.
The main argument that people use as to why they wouldn't be valid is because, those books were written like a couple hundred years after Christ ascended, so they can't be accurate. But that's not true. The Gospel of Thomas was the earliest written gospel written.
Mm-hmm.
It is more recent it was written closer to Christ's time than like Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John.
Right.
Those four main texts were written like 50 to 100 years after Christ was born.
Yeah.
Books in the Old Testament were written hundreds, if not thousands of years after those events supposedly happened. So saying that the Nag Hammadi library is not accurate because of the time they were written in makes absolutely no sense if you're not willing to look at time when it comes to the rest of the Bible. And that's the main argument that people use. I absolutely think that they are valid. I definitely don't think that they're perfect because humans trying to interpret the divine, I don't think is ever going to be perfect because humans make mistakes and humans aren't perfect. So absolutely. I'm not saying you should read the Nag Hammadi library and take it word for word and believe everything it says.
Right.
Use it to your own interpretation, but it's definitely something that you should read and should learn about, because there are definitely different messages there than what you would see in your typical Bible.
Absolutely, yes. It feels like there's just been a lot of like, it was like censorship before censorship. It was like a thing. Like for real. So do you believe that Jesus was an ascended master of some sort? Like he was here to kind of show us, what we can aspire to be in a sense?
Yes. So there's evidence for this. I wish I don't have my notebook with me where I wrote this down, but basically there is a verse in the Bible where Jesus talks about people talking like, who do people say? Oh my gosh, it is so windy outside. I don't know if you can hear that.
Here too. It is here too.
Yeah. Anyway, he was like, who do people say that the Messiah is? Some people say it was Moses. Some people say that it's Ezekiel. And he like lists all of these people. And you could interpret that as, well, the people at the time were just speculating who the Messiah was going to be. Or you could interpret it as Jesus was reincarnated several times and actually lived as those people, which makes sense because when it comes to the ascended masters, it is known that ascended masters have lived multiple lives at multiple times. That's how they become ascended masters. So the idea that it very well might be implied that Jesus was reincarnated several times, and in early Christianity, reincarnation was like a core belief, which a lot of people don't know.
Right.
I absolutely think that he was an ascended master. I think I would definitely consider him a demigod. I do.
Yes.
I have mixed feelings on the Immaculate Conception, but I do believe that he was a divine figure that's maybe slightly more powerful than the average human.
Maybe
But
just a little
the
quick,
purpose
like quicker,
was,
like to develop with those gifts, because that's what he came to do, kind of thing.
yeah, and to show us how we could develop similarly.
Right. That's actually a good question too, like that I didn't really, because I've always had mixed feelings on that myself, for sure. Because like it just gets confusing, and it's like, well, what really happened? Because I've heard of like parthenogenesis, and that's really where I get like, what did she like just do it herself? Like was it just like she had because like back then women were able to somehow like do it themselves, like because they're apparently, I'm not 100% sure, but like that's been theorized that women were able to like take sperm from their bone marrow or whatever. And I know now it's been proven that like it's not safe right now to do, but also like that thing has been, but through evolution we've been conditioned to not need that. But I don't know. What do you think about like the Immaculate Conception? Just like maybe a little bit what your ideas on it are.
The theory that I've seen going around TikTok mainly is that Jesus had to have been born biologically female and was therefore a trans man, because if Mary didn't have any sperm, then
that's true.
Only XX chromosomes could be produced. Now, this is not entirely out of the question, but living as a trans man 2,000 years ago would have been a lot more difficult than it is today. It's difficult today, even, let alone back then. I think it would have been a lot more obvious that this person was not a biological male, especially because in that time, like your hair on your head and your facial hair, like that had symbolism, that meant something. So if that were the case, they must have done an excellent job at not letting anyone else around them know that Jesus was trans. It very well could have been the case, considering all the other miraculous things that Jesus did. It's not out of the question. I don't think it's likely, but it's definitely within the realm of possibilities. I don't know. I think that with the divine, anything is possible, and if we don't know what humanity was like 2,000 years ago. We only know what we've read, but none of us were there to know what was going on. So maybe humanity was in just really kind of a bad place, and the divine was like, we need to send someone to help them.
Yeah.
And in which case, desperate times call for desperate measures, and the desperate measure was the Immaculate Conception, maybe. I don't know.
Right.
There's so many different theories. Or some people say that Mary's husband, Joseph, was Jesus's biological father.
That's what I've heard too. Yeah. Yeah, it's like anything is possible, and people theorize and speculate about like so many things back then. And I don't know. I mean, I think that whatever makes sense to you is what like is important at the end of the day. I don't think it's important to try to convince yourself of something that doesn't make sense to you. Absolutely. Just because it's like I've never thought about that, because like when I think about parthenogenesis, you're right, it would be a female. So that's interesting. I never thought about it that deeply, like to that point of it. But yeah,
unless for some reason perhaps Mary was intersex, because back then people didn't know what intersex was. So there's so many possibilities.
True. Wow. Yeah.
I don't know.
I know, girl. I get it. It's just kind of, it's fun to like talk about, though, to think about that kind of stuff. Let's see. So what are your thoughts on the misconceptions about witchcraft in the Christian community? Just a little bit.
It's all stupid. Like,
simply put, it's stupid.
It's demonic, and you're gonna go to hell, and you're listening to that. I've heard all of those things from my own family.
Oh, I know.
Ridiculous.
Girl, it's like one day my mom is like, oh, like so into it, because like my grandma and grandpa both passed away within the last couple of years, and they've been very, very, very present within our lives. And my mom's here a lot with like helping with the baby and stuff. So she's like kind of sometimes she's like cool and like into it, and she'll like ask your parents a little question or whatever. But then one day, like a couple weeks ago, she was like, at church they were talking in the homily about the cards and all this stuff and how it's evil and you have to burn it.
Oh my God.
She said a Ouija board is what she. I'm like, okay, with that, I mean, like that's a tool, but like people don't use them right. It's just like anything else. Like people just don't know what they're doing, and people also make up a lot of stuff about it on like movies, whatever, and it gets exaggerated and confused, and it's annoying.
Yeah, right. There's definitely situations where things go wrong, but I feel like those are the only ones that people hear about, and they use that as like a reason to be like, oh no, like, yeah.
Yeah, and it's not like I want to convince anyone of anything, but it's like you don't even have to. It's like they can feel it when they're open to it,
Yeah.
Like my mom, she'll see it when she's open to it, but it's not easy to like undo, like 40 plus years of conditioning either. So it's hard with family for sure.
Well, and my mom is like okay with angel numbers and with I am fully convinced that I am a hereditary witch and that everyone on my mom's side of the family just decided to not embrace their power. Everyone on my mom's side of the family is psychic.
Us too.
And it's like we could have such an incredible family coven if y'all would just embrace it, and they're choosing not to, and that is so sad.
My aunt was telling my mom how she like was smelling my grandpa's cologne like multiple different times, like it's happened to her, and it's just like, man.
Yeah, like my mom and my grandma each have friends who have passed away, and they'll call me and be like, oh yeah, I'm talking to Anna today, I'm talking to Cassie today, and it's like, oh, so that's okay, but me crushing up herbs and putting them on a candle that's the devil, like, it makes no sense.
I know, girl. Like, and doing things for them, that's what is, like, it's so bad. I mean, it's like, slowly, I think it's, like, starting to become clearer to a lot of people, but a lot of people don't want to, like, admit it, because, like, you're made to think one thing your whole life, and then it's kind of like with quantum physics, like a lot of like materialistic scientists don't want to believe that because they've studied one thing their whole life. It's like your whole life's being flipped on its head. So it's like I have compassion for them, but it can get frustrating at times.
Yeah.
So the next question I have here is about how King James screwed up the Bible and all of its teachings.
Yeah. So, King James was a king. He wanted to power the people. He wanted power over the government. And he knew that people were more likely to listen to the Bible than they were to listen to a person. So he changed the Bible and was like, oh, would you look at that? The Bible says that you have to obey these things that I just so happen to also make into law? What a coincidence. So
I think not.
That's basically what it was, is trying to change the Bible to fit his views and his laws for his kingdom at the time. And unfortunately, a lot of Bibles that you read today, even if they're, your NIV, ESV, whatever, are still based on a lot of what is in the King James. And there's a lot of inaccuracies with the King James too. Like a lot of the King James translators were not familiar with Greek and some of the other languages in the book. So there was a lot of mistranslations and a lot of changing things around basically to fit the law at the time. So that's why I always say that King James ruined everything.
Yes, yeah, and I listened to a couple of your podcasts, and I remember there was like a lot, and I've also heard that like they have switched like words that were in there before to like from one thing to like homosexual, and that homosexual is never in the Bible, all this stuff. There's nothing about any of that or witchcraft or any of it.
The word homosexual first appeared in the Bible in 1946.
Okay.
So it wasn't even King James's time. It was
way after.
I believe the RSV translation, if I'm not mistaken, is when it first appeared. They took two separate words that had absolutely nothing to do with each other, and then decided to make them one word, which translated to homosexuality. I
Wow.
believe there was also a passage that I believe originally said, "Man shall not lie with boy," and it got
Yeah,
changed
that's
to,
what I've
"Man shall
heard.
not lie with man." It's all over the place.
It's ridiculous. Yeah, really. It's yeah, it's ridiculous.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just like it's so confusing and like muddy and just like it can be like overwhelming for people that like have an interest in learning about it, but like don't know which one to believe.
Right.
But let me see what's the next question I have. But I think that it's interesting that like a lot of there's so many different translations, but then there's like the actual like just why don't people just like go back to that? There's a translator on Google. Like go to the scriptures if you really want to learn.
That might not. Google Translate is certainly not accurate either.
Yeah.
And there's stuff written in dead languages. Like, yeah, there's plenty of
Cool.
scholars who are plenty knowledgeable in Latin, but it's also a dead language. So
Mhm. That's
unfortunately,
true.
there's just no winning. Everyone be nice to each other. That's really what Jesus.
It really is all it was. It was just about having respect for each other at the end of the day. It's not that complicated.
Right?
Let me see. Do you? Oh yeah, I really wanted to know because this intrigued me. Do you know what like kind of spells are in Psalms and how to use them? Like, what's that about? With the a little bit about that.
Yeah, I know that this is a thing, but I don't know a whole lot about it, if I'm being completely honest. However, I'm pretty sure you can find it on Google. Obviously, cross-reference. Don't trust everything that you see on the internet, but
Right.
it is on the internet, and there's lots of books and how you can use the Psalms in your magical practice. Unfortunately, do I have mine? I don't know where my Book of Shadows is. I used to have it. I have a notebook basically that I have as my Book of Shadows where I have them written down, and I can't find it.
We can talk about it next time. I'll send you some of the questions next time if you want me to, and we can do it that way.
I know that it is a thing that exists and it's something that you can do, but I can't name off the top of my head like use this for this.
Yeah, no, I just thought it was like because I don't what like things you do necessarily like study because I know you know a lot about a lot of stuff. Like you're very like I love watching your videos and everything.
Thank you.
And I honestly like I want to learn like how did you start like with like those conversations you have with like Yeshua and the Christian God? Like how did that all begin in meditation? I'm sure, but like
so because I grew up Christian, I grew up in a church that encouraged talk to God, talk to Jesus like you would talk to one of your friends. I grew up in a kind of informal, casual church environment, and it very much did have its problems. But that was one thing that was good about it, is that it encouraged conversation with
they did too, now that I think about it. It's a good point.
So that is something that I was able to fine tune and get really good at even before I started my craft.
Yeah.
And I'm not as good as having those conversations with my other deities because I haven't been working with them as long. But you could argue that I've been, quote unquote, working with Yeshua my entire life.
Right.
But as I began my deconstruction journey and started getting more into meditations and the witchy stuff, and I started having more questions, I guess I just kind of figured, well, who better to ask than my deities who this is actually affecting? So it was, a part of it was like reading books and reading other people's UPGs, and this is very much a UPG of my own as well, and I very much emphasize that on TikTok. Like,
I love that.
This is the message that I received, that I channeled while I was meditating, but take it with a grain of salt, et cetera, et cetera.
Right.
But yeah, I just got into a place where a lot of people were asking me questions, mainly about the Christian God, because everyone was like, I really like Jesus, but I don't really like his dad. Can you talk about that? And I was like, yes.
Yeah,
for sure. I will defend him until my dying day. And so if you're listening to this and you're like, yeah, I like Jesus, but I don't like the Christian God, go find my Christian God UPG playlist on TikTok. It explains everything.
Yeah, it's good.
I felt the need to defend.
I got chills. watching that, like some of those. Like, I'm getting chills now. Like, I really did.
I did. I felt the need to defend.
Almost a cry. Like, I almost started crying because that one where it was like he was just it really like touched my heart. I was talking about like just everything with how we like see that it's just like we don't take everything so literally with like the other gods, or we don't blame them if they make mistakes and stuff like that. And that like hit me. I was like, oh.
That's really step one, is viewing the Christian God like any other pagan god. The pagan gods are incredibly powerful and they can do incredible things, but they also make mistakes.
Yeah.
And we have had it ingrained that, oh, Christian God, he doesn't make mistakes. He doesn't do anything wrong. Yeah. Yes, he does, because he's just like all the other gods. And the idea that he can do no wrong is a human fallacy. Yeah. And so once you can get that knocked out of your head and you can see some of the bad things that happened in the Bible similarly to the bad things that happen in other pieces of mythology, there's places all over Norse mythology where Loki goes and screws things up, and he has an army of devotees, myself included. I work with Loki. I love Loki. Yeah. But you have to look at the Christian God in that same light, and I try to look at the Bible as a piece of mythology that you can take things from but shouldn't be taken literally, just like Greek mythology, Roman mythology. Any mythology for any deity that you worship is supposed to be acknowledged, but not taken literally. So I acknowledge the Bible. I do not take it literally. And that has brought me so much peace in practice. Sure.
I completely agree. And that's what, like, I get so intrigued with, like, the Gnostic texts, because they talk a lot about like how the story of Jesus and the North Star and the three wise men, and it could be like about astrology. Like, what about that? Have you heard about that one before?
Okay, let's see if I can phrase this correctly. So, yes, it has something to do with astrology, in that like the three wise men are parallel to the three stars in Orion's belt. And they are in line with a star that faces the north, so that's why they say, like, the three wise men followed the North Star, and I guess that star shined over where Jesus was supposedly born. I made a video on this too, and now of course I can't remember, but that doesn't mean that story didn't happen. Because there's also theories that the three wise men were actually magi or mystics at the time. So it could be both.
I think it definitely has like a little bit of both. I think it's kind of like, it's like that was like the embodiment of the stars, and like they were like the embodiment. Oh my God, I'm getting chills. Of that, like, you know what I mean, energy almost, because it was such a big deal that like there is a being that was gonna make, you know, such big waves coming into this, you know, dimension, planet, and everything like that. So that's really interesting. Yeah, the chills I'm getting is just like waves, and they're very subtle. Like very, very subtle. Let me see what other questions we have here. What do you think that Jesus was doing from age 13 to 29, like those missing years? What do you have? Like, have you contemplated that at all?
I think he was exploring. It's not proven, and unfortunately I don't think that there is a way to prove it, but there is evidence that he went all over the place, that he went to India, that he went to what is now the UK, that he had an uncle who was a traveler, and he just traveled around the world with his uncle learning. There's theories that he studied Buddhism and Hinduism and all of these other philosophies and religions. There's a theory that he studied with the Druids. And again, these are all theories. We're not, there's no way for us to know. But boy, is it interesting to think about, and you can Google all of these things. I believe there is a documentary called And Did Those Feet? And I believe that analyzes Jesus potentially studying with the Druids, if I'm not mistaken. There's lots of books about Jesus's missing years. But the most popular theories are that he went to India and other countries and studied other philosophies and religions. And again, in order for him to be considered an ascended master, that makes complete sense.
Right, right.
I absolutely believe that.
Yeah, I think it's really, really cool to think about. And I think it's interesting that those years are technically missing. Like, why?
Yeah, why? Are you telling me that no one had like a diary, or none of the druids were like, man, so this 14-year-old kid said this really cool thing to me. Like, there's no documentation.
Yeah.
Why?
Like, it makes no sense. It really is. It's something.
What are they trying to hide?
Right.
I try not to get too conspiracy theorist with this kind of thing, but I definitely feel like someone somewhere was trying to keep things hush hush.
Yeah, I believe that too. It makes sense because like there's a certain like story, there's a certain like, you know what I mean, like place that Jesus fits in the world right now, and that would kind of fuck things up for the church. So it would make perfect sense that they're hiding it. If there was any information like about that stuff, it would make sense that it would be hidden.
If there's any information on that, it is probably hidden somewhere in the Vatican. Again, I try not to be too much of a conspiracy theorist, but I definitely believe that the Vatican knows some shit that we will never know, unfortunately.
Yeah, maybe not in this lifetime.
Yeah, right. We'll know in the next life.
Let's see. So what do you think about Sethian Gnosticism? Like the idea that like the universe, like so I don't know if you ever heard of Morg, but he does a lot of videos on like, he was raised Christian too, but he kind of picks it apart in kind of like, not, I don't want to say cynicism, but just a very, he looks at things, like he says, with logic and reason. And he basically he was talking about like the Sethian text. He uses that same website to look at all the Gnostic texts and like do lectures on them. Yeah. And it was like interesting because he was talking about the Sethians basically believe that like the God, like the all that is, you know, the one or whatever, went like insane because of one of his thoughts, like his first thought, Sophia, or well, the first like wisdom is what it translates to, I believe. It was the first like dimension or whatever, but she acted out of harmony with everything else, so it created the other like Christian God, and that was who created the whole world. But he didn't know that about the Christian God, didn't know about all the other like everything else, because he was created out of, so it's some whole other shit.
Yeah.
So I was just wondering if you had any thoughts on like all of that.
Yeah, so one thing that I want to emphasize for everyone listening is that just like there's different denominations or sects of Christianity, there are different denominations and different sectors of Gnosticism. Yes. If you put two Gnostics in a room together, they might not believe the exact same things, even though they would both consider themselves to be Gnostics. Absolutely. So keep that in mind, first and foremost. I have worked with Sophia. I still honor her, but like I said, everyone in Gnosticism says different things. Some people in Gnosticism say exactly what you said, like source or the creator is evil and something that we need to escape. Some of them think that Sophia is the creator of all things and that she's to be worshipped. So it really just depends on who you ask. I do not consider myself a Gnostic, but I do agree with some ideas that would be considered Gnostic, if that makes sense.
Yeah, like omnism. That's kind of where I'm at.
Yes, I am very much an omnist. Absolutely. Yeah. I believe that every religion is correct in its own way.
Me too. Yeah.
And so I definitely, I remember there was like the God in prison theory going around TikTok that kind of stemmed from Gnosticism as well. And that was an interesting take for sure. So I don't know. I don't, and it's going to make some people mad because I'm a Christian witch and I'm saying this. I don't believe that the Christian God is source. I really don't know if I believe that any of the deities that we know of and actively worship could be considered source. And that's just my opinion. I think that they are all stemmed from
Yeah.
source. But the end-all, be-all source that created everything that ever has been and ever will be, I think, is so far beyond our understanding.
Comprehension, yes.
And that is why there are so many deities and spirits and guides and entities to help us along the way, to help us gain that understanding to the best that our puny human minds can comprehend.
The 10% that we use.
Yeah, right? So all of that to say, I agree with a lot of Gnostic ideals, but the idea that, oh, the creator God went crazy and that's why everything on Earth is bad. Maybe the creator of Earth, but I wouldn't say the creator of all
everything. That's source energy would, and that's what he was explaining. The difference in his beliefs was that, like, he believes source, like, just wanted to experience itself from a different point of view, and that's a more positive perspective of it. It's like seeing it as something more of like an experience thing than, you know, like crazy.
Right.
So yeah, I definitely. I just love talking about this stuff. It's so interesting to look at all the different beliefs and just see how it can all make sense in one way or another, but everybody's going to have a different idea. And
sure.
That's okay. Yeah. But let's see. I have a couple more, and then I'll let you go. We were talking. Oh, actually, I mean, we only been talking for about almost 40 minutes, but let me see. So you said, like, do you, like, because you said you know a little bit about Sophia. Do you believe that, like, what she did was necessary, like her creating that kind of like what, like, you know, malformed or like different idea that was outside of like balance or harmony with everything else was necessary in order for kind of like everything to become what it is? I know we kind of just talked a little bit about this, but like
trying to put my pieces together. So everything requires balance. You can't appreciate the light without dark. You can't appreciate calm without chaos. So in a way, creating unbalance is what created balance.
Right.
So I do think it was somewhat necessary. I'm not too versed in that story, but yeah, given that Sophia is the epitome of wisdom, it's literally what her name translates to.
Right.
I think it was a wise move on her part to create dichotomies, because dichotomies are necessary in order to have wisdom and balance and knowledge in as many things as you possibly can.
Right, because without having that split, there it would never have we wouldn't be here. But let me see. I mean, we talked a little bit about like what Jesus was here to teach humanity, but would you want to, like, is there any that like main concept that you like want to tell everyone who had like the opportunity to tell everyone one concept that really sticks with you or that like sticks out for you?
I think that Jesus is very live and live. As long as you are not causing harm to yourself or anyone else, do what you want and let others do what they want. Now, should something that's causing harm to other people, then to come about. I definitely think that if this were around today, he'd be some social justice warrior. People would hate him. They hated him too, and I think that's something that modern Christians today tend to forget. Jesus was not liked during his time.
Right.
And probably wouldn't be liked today either. And so I guess that, like, if you're struggling with your spirituality, or in a place where, you know, my family members don't like what I believe in, or my friends that what I do is weird, or Jesus was weird too. Everyone that he was weird. One of my favorite Jesus movies that I don't know if it's still on Netflix. It was at Netflix at some point. But it's the Mary Magdalene movie with Rooney Mara and Joaquin Phoenix. I wish they cast Middle Eastern actors. I will say that. I have white actors, but
right.
The actors that they did cast, they did do a very good job at portraying those characters. And again, even though I wish they would have cast a Middle Eastern actor, Joaquin Phoenix does one of the best portrayals of Jesus I have ever seen in film, because it perfectly encapsulates how weird Jesus was for his time. People don't think about that enough. Like, yes, he had followers and his appreciators and people who liked his message, but the majority of people were like, who is this? Why are we letting our people listen to him? And that's why he was executed. I hope that can potentially bring some peace to some people who are struggling with their beliefs, with identity, whatever it might be. Jesus was weird too, so it's okay if you're a little bit weird.
Exactly. Who's calling me right now? Oklahoma. Yeah. But yes, I completely 100% agree, because think about that, like, he died for us, but it was like he was like here, people they had an issue clearly.
Yeah.
So it is. It's really important to remember that, like, if we live in this world, like, maybe then we don't want to look in the mirror, because like the world's not in the best right now. So it's a good thing to be different in this time and in history, honestly. I have a couple of questions. So what do you think we can bring more awareness to hidden truths of like Jesus' teachings? I mean, you do a really amazing job with your videos and your podcast. Like, I really appreciate it. I'm just so excited to talk to you. So I want to thank you for all of that. I mean, besides the stuff that we are doing, is there any like ideas you have for the future kind of thing, for to expand? If you could, like, if the money was no object and you just had like the opportunity to go what would you be like want to do to expand, the knowledge?
I would love to write books, but that is a lot of work. A girl is still in college. Wow. Chaotic Witch Aunt wrote a book recently, and I don't know how they did it, because they are still a college student, and I'm like, Frankie, you are a boss. I'm like barely making it, and Frankie's out here writing books and doing all this cool stuff. I would love to get to that point one day. Frankie has also been doing this a lot longer than I have. But I would love to get to that point one day. I would love to travel and go to like craft conferences and conventions and things like that, because I know that those are popular. I don't know, and maybe there are, but I don't know how often you see Christian witches presenting themselves at these witchcraft conventions or pagan conventions. So there's that, but I just want to encourage people to read Jesus from outside perspective. Research Christopaganism, because that's how you'll learn integrating Christianity and paganism. It's time. So research, and like I said, if money was no object, I'd be writing books and going places, but money is an object, and I'm in college, so.
What are you studying?
I'm studying sociology, but I'm really probably not going to use my degree much. I've kind of slowed like my bone throws and stuff for now, because I'm moving and graduating in weeks. So I'm looking at a pile of boxes that I have to take to the office tomorrow, and then I'm gonna be done until May 12th. And because when May 12th gets here, graduation will be over. I'll be moved. It'll all be done. Launch my store, restart bone throws, and just kind of start fresh. That will hopefully be my life. I'm gonna add tiers to my Patreon and just try to really expand this platform any way that I can, and I hope that by doing that I can educate people on this kind of thing, and hopefully eventually pass the torch to people to educate the masses.
Right, exactly. Yeah. It's funny because I went to college for like one semester and I wanted to study like sociology, psychology or something, but I just knew college wasn't like for me at that time. Like I was struggling and stuff. So, but yeah, like I really want to be able to do like I have a book that like it's like an autobiography that I'm doing, but like I wanted to publish it, but it's not time yet. So I just have patience and finish like the next couple of years and see what happens, and because like they're really like good success. That's what my guides keep telling me. They're like, just wait, like, you went a lot.
Yeah, I have like I have a very basic outline written, and I'm working on the more advanced outline, and then I'll probably do an even more advanced outline. And
yeah, I was just like, I'm gonna write them. I started writing it in my notes, maybe phone, like a few years ago. I was like, I'm gonna look, and like, then I transferred it to my laptop when I got this laptop, but I haven't looked at it in a while. Like I have to get back to it.
Yeah, I definitely want to tell my story eventually, but there's so much to tell. I'm rusty when it comes to writing, so it's like I would probably do all of this editing and then have my boyfriend read it because he's good at writing. Have my dad read it because he's a writer and an author and an artist and all this stuff, and send it to an actual editor. So.
Yeah, I have a friend who like published and a book, Crazy Smart. Her name is Bobby. She's lifted on TikTok, and she does like a shadow like courses and stuff like that and readings. But she's a really good like mentor of mine, and she's gonna help me like publish my book when the time comes and find an editor and all of that. So, like when the time comes, obviously you can probably talk to Frankie, but I'm really excited because I feel like people need to hear stories from the healers out there that like are going through what we've been through, but like don't really know the next step to do the work to they want. Because I know what it was like to be there, and it would have been nice to have this community. It's like I really want people to be able to utilize it.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's see. I want to know what you heard about like the mushroom thing with Jesus, like the theories that he was like guru or whatever.
Savannah or something.
Yeah, there's some. I don't know too much about it. I saw it right before. Like it was like one of the last questions I wrote. I was like, I gotta just see if she knows.
I know it exists. I don't know. Again, I know it's a theory that exists. I don't know about it thoroughly. I do know though that there is a theory that Moses' bush was actually DMT.
Yes.
His vision of God was actually a trip. And there's to know if that's actually true.
Just interpretations, right?
Right. And that's not to say that like I'm edge, I don't drink, I don't do drugs or anything like that. I know that people have very profound spiritual experience on DMT, LSD, whatever. That's not to minimize that experience, especially because the foundations of Judaism is based on a lot of what Moses did. And so I don't want to say like, well, everything that Moses did was false because he was just like, no, that's not what I'm saying.
No, yeah.
It very well still could have been a profound spiritual experience and message influenced by DMT. But it is a very interesting theory.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's like, I mean, and you can do that breath work too. You can really like the DMT in your breath.
Holographic breath work, I think.
Yeah, there's a lot of different kinds. It's like another thing that I do. Bobby, she leads work stuff lives, and there's a lot of different ways to like connect spiritually, and you don't necessarily like the chemical. You can like especially with DMT, you have it in your brain already.
Yeah.
And stuff like that, and I mean, but yeah, who knows, and I've had like profound like experience where Jesus took me in meditation a few days ago, and I was like, I was meditating with one of my guides, or I don't remember, I was messaging one of my guys, and I was like, I can't talk to you right now. I was like, I can't talk for like
a vibe. Yeah.
It was cute. And he was like super nice and understanding about it. It was so funny. I was like,
I know. He's like, hey, I want to join. Hello.
Yeah, he's like, I know you can see me right now. It's easier for me to see you right now. Like, just, it was cute. And he kept, like, it was his face going back and forth. And then it came together. It was very interesting. I was like,
We'll just video not too long ago saying that, like, when stuff get jump scared or something, and I go, oh, Jesus Christ. Come into my room and be like, what's up? And he thinks he is so funny.
I say that a lot too, so that's awesome. That's so funny. And when I get giddy like this is also like a form of like it's just like a confirmation for me, because I used to do this when I was a lot younger, just like when I would think about life.
Yeah.
But so I'm just gonna ask you one more thing about like about thoughts about like Adam and Eve real quick, about the punishment of birth. What do you like? Have you asked about that at all? What are your thoughts about that?
Birth?
Like how they like some people say that like if like they're having like making birth painful and all that was a punishment because they laid down or eat through or whatever, like how he basically punished women through getting him have and all that. Like,
I have mixed feelings about that because humans are not the only beings experiencing pain when giving birth. Okay. You can look at any animal giving birth and it's very obvious that they're in pain. So it's like we implied that animals were in pain, humans are going to be in pain. And there's also a lot of science behind menstruation. Yes, it is also necessary for reproduction. So I don't really know. I believe in painful birth and menstruation.
There's also a lot of very beautiful things that through natural. I want to natural birth so badly. Because like, there's a euphoria that you reach when you're giving birth as well. That is different, like with serotonin releasing and all of that stuff.
I've always I obviously never given birth, but I've heard like the minute the baby is out, it's like this incredible high, and you.
That's what I heard too, and I mean my son had to be a C-section because he was flipped like in freaking time. So, but I like one, and he was born during COVID, so I had to course online all this to do a natural birth, and then I didn't get to have it. And that's
no.
But it's, I mean, everything's for a reason. It's fine. Like, he's here. That matters.
Yeah, exactly.
But it was kind of too. But like, yeah, there's like nothing. Some of them just don't go to plan, especially when it comes to that. Like, there's so much out there about like, the Christian God. I just don't think that he's all bad. I don't think he's really bad at all. Like, I feel like there's a good about it. It's just people have taken it and turned it into something different.
I could definitely see, again, however many hundreds or thousands of years men in the church using the idea of birth and menstruation as being a punishment, as being like, see, the women are inherently bad.
Yeah.
This is your punishment for being bad, as, a way of finishing basically an excuse for sexism.
Mm-hmm.
I could very much see that. So no, I don't believe that birth being painful is correlated to the forbidden fruit.
No, I don't either. I thought it was just interesting because I definitely like have it. Like, wonder
I have to.
I think about it. Wonder like so let's see. Do you like to work with like angels like at all? Like, I saw a video about like I'm not intimidated by demons, I'm intimidated by angels.
Well, I was more specifically talking about Metatron. There is something, like, he's so just powerful. And it's like if you were in the same room as like world leader surrounded by all armed bodyguards. That's a similar feeling that I get when I encounter Metatron. I really, at the moment, I don't have my guardian angel, but I certainly encounter other angels all time when I make my deity candles, because people ask me to make for the archangels or their guardian angel or whatever. Mm-hmm. And the thing is like, it depends on what mythology you believe in. You very well could argue that demons were formerly angels and are therefore equally as creepy and weird looking to the human eye and whatever. I definitely think that a lot of the times demons are, for lack of better words, more acclimated to the humans.
And they completely shift.
Yeah, like your deities and supernatural entities aren't gonna fully understand your Gen Z humor. I think that the demons understand it a little bit better than the angels. But it also depends on which angel you're talking to and which demon you're talking to. Is it someone who commonly works with humans?
Gabriel came through the other day. He made a joke. He was funny.
Yeah, exactly. Because Gabriel works with humans all the time, and Michael works with humans a lot, but he's a lot more stoic and stern because he's such a protector. On the other hand, Lucifer,
love him,
has an army of humans and is accustomed to humans and understands that we're weird. So it depends on who you're working with, you're talking
about. Absolutely. It's because I have these instances that are for certain angels. I have Uriel, Metatron, and Gabriel. And I'll only use Metatrons when I'm meditating, when I want to go to Cosmic Records or something like that. And I had Gabriel's and on the phone, my friend, she was like, someone with a G, someone's in with a G coming through.
Whoa. That's awesome. I love stories like that.
But then after that, I was like, confused for a second. And then she was like, Glory. And I was like, oh my God. Gabriel incense. I just started. That was the funny part about it.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it was cool. I was just, I was like, you can't shut up. Yeah. It was super cool. I was like, so I think I am gonna just ask you one last question. What does spiritual evolution mean to you?
Oh my God, that is a question.
Right.
Just constantly learning. Never stop learning. Even people who grew up in witchy households or in their 60s, 70s, 80s have been in the their entire lives, learn new things every day. Absolutely. And that's what evolution in general is all about, is continuing to learn and be open-minded and just open to experience new things and learn new things. So that's, I think, the whole point of spiritual evolution, is to just keep learning, and not everything is going to resonate with you, and that's fine, but just learning everything that you can and taking in anything that does resonate with you. That's definitely my biggest goal, my own spiritual evolution. Just learn and absorb everything that I can.
Absolutely. There's much information and knowledge out there. I was like, I need to learn it all right now. But it's not going anywhere.
It's so overwhelming when I'm starting. And sometimes I still get overwhelmed because there's so many unread books on the shelf.
I know what I'm buying more. I need this one.
Go to Barnes & Noble and walk out with 6 books, even though I have 30 unread books on my shelf.
I know it. Now I'm going to read. My son likes it.
Yeah, right?
But it's a constant, being open
and
to.
that is all I have for you guys today. I hope you enjoyed.
Your belief system can change.
From the conversation it's not a bad thing.
It doesn't make you any.
If you're interested in learning
actually
more
means you're learning and grow and evolve with existence and not just stay in one place.
Yep.
This was really good. I'm really excited that we did this. Thank you.